Chapter 141 Nightmare, the second more commutation ticket. Tired, Klein lifted the sealed spiritual wall and let the cool night wind blow on his face with the smell of vegetation, which made him awake for a few minutes. He rubbed the warm classical seal, 3-0782, in his palm and sincerely sighed. Who would have thought that this badge should be combined with a drop of blood? It is estimated that the strong people of the Eternal Sun Church have been looking for it, but they have not found it. After moving his neck, Klein didn't dare to try any other ideas and put the variation of the sun emblem on the inside of the thin windbreaker. He followed the chain, took out a silver pocket watch with branches and vines, snapped it open, looked at it, and found that it was more than an hour before Fry, the body receiver, came to change shifts. My eyelids need 2 matches to support them. This is the sequela of death. Klein had no choice but to take out a small metal bottle from a small dark bag in Gidge, pull out the plug, and put it to his nose. The choking smell of mint mixed with disinfectant quickly got into his nose, which stimulated him to have pimples, and his spirit did it one brace up, and he instantly forgot his drowsiness. This is a recipe he learned from Fry, the body receiver, called Crag Oil, which can help people to resist the stench of decay and has a refreshing effect. For the next hour or so, Klein was particularly tormented. From time to time, he stood up for a walk and was bitten by mosquitoes in the woods several times to suck blood. Finally, he saw Fry with a high nose and thin lips, black hair and blue eyes, wearing a thin trench coat and holding a cane, and walked out of the town. Although the other party was still cold and gloomy like a Promethean, Klein was like seeing the savior, yawned while covering his mouth, and was greeted by tears and took the seal, 3-0782, from the inside of the clothes. What happened? Fry looked at the pale and ugly face of his teammates and took the initiative to ask Klein sigh away. I was on duty at Cheney's Gate last night, and I didn't sleep very well this morning, so I am very sleepy now. He didn't mention it much, but changed the subject and said, Do I take turns after 4 hours? 7 hours. The captain doesn't need to sleep in the middle of the night. Fry accepted the variation of the sun emblem. Cultivating immortals makes people happy. Klein silently slandered the captain, bid farewell to Fry, and walked to the town. And on the way along the street near the hotel, he took out his pocket watch and looked at the time. Hey, 10 minutes earlier than the appointed time. What a warm man. Klein smiled, sped up, returned to the hotel, pushed open the half-open door, walked up to the second floor in the eyes of the boss, and entered his room, locking the door and taking off his coat and shoes. He didn't clean himself, but fell straight down on the bed. In just over 10 seconds, his breathing became heavier first, then long and steady. In his sleep, Klein returned to the earth. In front of him, he had not yet played the game of customs clearance. On the left, there were iced Coke and spicy chicken wings, and on the right, there were bitter bamboo shoots, sliced pork soup, and rice. He has never suffered from bamboo shoots, but he likes the soup cooked with it and sliced meat very much. The soup is refreshing and appetizing, and it has a little oily smell, which is perfect for soaking rice with a dish of good dip. He can eat a whole bowl of rice more than usual, just as Klein was about to enjoy his supper and play games crazily. The scene in his dream changed and reappeared as the internal pattern of number 2 Narcissus Street. Klein suddenly became alert and clearly knew that he was dreaming. He saw himself sitting at the side of the dining table with a copy of Tingendalian. His hand, with tomato oxtail soup, fried lamb chops, mashed potatoes, and oatmeal bread in front of him. He turned his head subconsciously, looked at the gate, and suddenly saw a figure standing outside the corresponding protruding belly window of the living room. Staring at the figure inside the house quietly, Klein got a fright and immediately recognized that it was done with dark gray eyes. He stuck his face to the window and looked at the people inside silently. Captain, don't scare people in your dreams, okay? Is this how you play nightmares? Klein thought angrily and funny, took out a spoon, fished out a piece of beef, and put it in his mouth. Well, it's my craft. He sighed to himself and understood why he suddenly woke up in his dream and why the scene of the earth disappeared instantly. When someone invades his dreams, he will naturally be alert. At this moment, Dunn left the protruding belly window position, directly pushed open the door of Maridi's house, covered with a black trench coat, and quietly walked to the opposite side of Klein. He took off his hat, nodded gently, sat down, picked up a knife, fork and spoon at any moment, and ate the tomato. Oxtail soup, fried lamb chops, mashed potatoes and oatmeal bread on the table with great speed. Klein gawked at Wait for a while, wondering what the captain really wanted to do. Phew. Dunn heaved a sigh of satisfaction, gave Klein a thumbs up, then took out his pipe and matches and took a sip with intoxication. Spitting out smoke, he stood up, took his hat, saluted the old school but steadily, and stepped out of Maridi's house, leaving this dreamed. Klein looked at the captain's back. Good half-day failed to return to absolute being. He looked down at the empty plate and subconsciously wanted to reproduce the food just now. However, this time, no matter tomato oxtail soup, fried lamb chops, or mashed potatoes, they failed to continue to appear in his dream. Was completely swallowed? This is the ability of nightmare? Klein's mouth twitched and thought helplessly, so, the captain's purpose is to make me eat food taken late at night in my dreams? This is really a nightmare. This nightmare is really creative. With a laugh, he quit his dream and went back to sleep at 5:30 the next morning. Klein, who had to get up early, drank coffee, ate toast and bacon, and hurried outside the town to replace Dunn. At 7 o'clock, they set off on time and returned to downtown Tianjin. Less than 10 o'clock, they arrived at number 36 Zotland Street. After the energetic Dunn put the seal, 3-0782, back at Cheney's gate, Fry sat in front of the mechanical typewriter and personally wrote yesterday's task report and the corresponding consumption reimbursement application before the civilian staff was in place. Klein watched for a while and was satisfied to see that all the materials he used were listed, including the part he used to repel mosquitoes and insects. He didn't go home immediately, because he had already made an appointment with Dr. Dast in the madhouse by writing a secret letter to meet him at the scheduled place at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Then there will be a tarot party at 3 o'clock. Why does the boss of my secret organization have to live so tired? Klein said nothing to himself and lay in the night watchman's lounge for 2 hours to catch up on his sleep. He is not worried about forgetting the knowledge and things he got last night, which can be recalled by divination. What he is afraid of is that he neglected the existence of these knowledge and things and even lost the idea of divination, so he went over all the details in his mind before going to bed to deepen his impression. This is also the reason why Klein insists on writing a summary every week and sorting out all kinds of situations that after lunch, he took out his pocket watch, took a look, put on his hat, left Blackthorn Security Company, and went to the shooting club at number 3 Zotland Street, pushing open the door and entering the reception hall. Klein didn't go directly to the shooting range belonging to the night watchman, but found a place to sit down in the hall and waited patiently with black cane in his hands. He and Dast agreed to meet in this Zotland Street shooting club, and their agreed way is to write a letter. When Klein needs to meet, he will write to Dr. Dast Guderian as a patient's family member and ask about a special disease called split personality. In the letter, Klein will mention the word audience in various ways to confirm his identity with the ink dots in the hidden position, and the time when the letter is inadvertently written is the time of meeting. As for the meeting place, it was decided in their first negotiation. If Klein thinks it's time to change places, he will explain it in the interview to when Dast Guderian wants to meet, but it is not urgent. He can send the letter to the Hound Pub or the shooting club. The recipient is Mr. Hornacchis and wait for Klein to pick it up regularly. If he has an emergency, he must give the letter directly to Wright, the owner of Hound Pub, and he must mention looking for mercenaries, so that Wright, as a peripheral member of the Night Watchman, will immediately send the letter to Blackthorn Security Company after waiting for a while. 2 minutes before 1 o'clock, Klein saw Dast, whose temperament was quite gentle, enter the hall of the shooting club. He wore a black silk hat, a fitted tuxedo, a silver-inlaid cane in his hand, and a pair of rimmed glasses on his face. Dast looked around half a circle unnoticed, saw Klein nodding slightly, then looked back and went to the front desk, skillfully applied for the shooting range and rented guns. He's been here once. Small shooting range number 7, 3 Soul per hour, revolver rental fee, 1 Soul 6 pence per hour, including 6 bullets. The girl in charge of reception quickly fixed this matter. After arriving in Worcester for 1 hour and paying the fee of 10 Soul, He got a revolver and extra bullets and entered the corresponding shooting range under the guidance of the waiter. Klein waited for another 5 minutes, then got up slowly, carrying a cane, and came to the outside of the small shooting range number 7, knocking at the door. With a creaking sound, the door cracked a gap, and Dast first cast a glance around the probe warily, and then got out of the way. Klein immediately dodged in and locked the door. "Good afternoon, Mr. Dast." As he spoke, he took out a 10-sool note and handed it to the other party. "We won't let the peripheral members bear the cost of meeting, because I can reimburse," he added silently. Dast didn't refuse, accepted the cash, and then sync of voice asked, "Officer Moridi, what did you meet me for this time?" "P.S. The second one is to ask for a monthly ticket, Chapter 142 Lenovo, a third more for commutation ticket." Klein, of course, could not have mentioned the formula of Mind Reader at the beginning, but he didn't hide his other thoughts. After all, he was an audience opposite, and it was not so easy to fool. Has Hood Yujin been acting strangely recently? He first asked about the lunatic asylum patient who developed Dast Guderian into a member of the Psychological Alchemy Association. Dast looked at Klein's eyes, expressions and movements, and thought for the next way. "No, he is as usual. Frankly speaking, I think if he wants to leave the madhouse, he can act healthy and normal at once, but he doesn't. He still stays inside, as if trying to cure every patient. Well, those guys who are confused or furious or have abnormal thinking have got a little better. Maybe Hood Yujin is exercising his extraordinary ability in this way. Audience corresponds to Sequence 7 psychologist? Maybe even higher. Hood Yujin didn't work as a doctor in an insane asylum, but infiltrated as a patient, indicating that he didn't really master the acting method. It should be like Dast's guess that he was exercising his extraordinary ability, and this kind of exercise was close to the acting method, which could alleviate the negative influence of potions to some extent. So Hood Yujin simply made the insane asylum his home. Klein calmly showed himself to Hood because it will make Dast Guderian feel that he knows a lot, and is inscrutable. Thought of here, Klein also deduced another thing, that is, the Psychological Alchemy Club did not master the acting method. After all, a powerful member of at least Sequence 7 was not clear in this rare era, no matter which secret organization. Sequence 7 was at least middle-level enough to know some important things, especially the kind that could effectively help members fight out of control. But also, the Psychological Alchemy Association is a secret organization that was established in the last 200 or 300 years, or even later. It is normal that it has not mastered or summarized the acting method. At present, the only one that explicitly puts forward this method is the Secret Order, which is an ancient organization with a history of more than 1,500 years and can be traced back to the last era. The Goddess Church is older than the Priory. The history, clearly recorded in the Apocalypse of the Night and Letters of the Holy One, is almost 3,000 years, not counting the previous myths and legends. Why didn't such a church discover the acting method? In such a long history, in such a huge organization, there will always be members with unique ideas who try all kinds of possibilities unconsciously or with an experimental mentality. Just like Psychic Daily, they may not be able to clearly put forward the acting method, but they have started from the name of the potions, touched the right path, and gradually explored something through good feedback, which has accumulated from generation to generation and piled up one by one. Unless the top is a group of curly baboons, Klein's thoughts diverged to make associations, and the whole person was shocked in the eyes of other night watchmen who don't know how to play people. Like Psychic Daily are geniuses, and ordinary members can't imitate them. So no one will doubt why Daly's experience is difficult to transplant to himself. However, in the minds of people who have mastered the acting method, this is very strange. Klein believes that in the long history of the Night Goddess Church, Psychic Daily is definitely not the first member to quickly digest low-sequence potions by similar acting methods, and she may not even make it into the top 10 or the top 50. It doesn't make sense in probability. Unless Daly doesn't understand the acting method by herself and has someone else's guidance, then it can be explained that the Night Goddess Church can't sum up the acting method because of the old path. All members follow the past will and believe in the experience of their predecessors and dare not rebel at all. After all, a rebellion often means losing control. Well, in addition to this explanation, There is another possibility that the church's top management. I have to turn over the corresponding information, find out the cases of the extraordinary people belonging to the goddess church who quickly digested the potions, and find out their later endings. Klein pondered with dignity. Das looked at his face, waiting for a minute or two, wondering, and asked, "Officer, is there something wrong with Hood Organ's performance?" "Not yet. I just think of something else." Klein smiled and answered, putting aside his doubts first. He turned to ask away. "Is there any action by the Psychological Alchemy Association recently?" "No, except for a small gathering in Wa County, Joniaho, to exchange goods and experiences." Dast made no secret answer. Klein gently nods. "What about your own situation?" Dast controls its own expression way. "Not so good. I still often hear some gibberish and have some hallucinations. If I were not a psychiatrist, I would even think that I had a similar disease." As he spoke, his face became a little heavy. "I ignored those hallucinations and gibberish according to Hood Eugen and your instructions, which made me feel much better, but they still affected my sleep, made me irritable, and became unlike myself, as if a brand new me was growing inside, or it could be described as a new personality. I am worried about this." As I expected, even Don't Need Divination can predict. Klein had prepared to smile away. "You don't need to worry. You are now a peripheral member of the Night Watchman and have your own benefits. As an ancient organization, we have mastered many ways to avoid losing control. This may not be 100% effective, but it can definitely help you. In addition, I personally want to share my experience with you. You know, the gentleman standing in front of you completely got rid of hallucinations and delirium in just 1 month, so that they no longer appear. You should know how difficult it is from Hood Eugen and other companions." For the sake of audience, corresponding sequence 8, Mind Reader. Klein boasted a little and boasted frankly. "Officer, there is a lie in your words, but the main part is true." Das spoke suddenly and calmly. "What do you want from me?" Audience is really hard to deceive. Klein replied with a smile. "It's not just what I want." And Miss Justice, of course, he knew that Dast would definitely think that the Night Watchman team wanted something to, "If your method is really effective and I can touch the items or information you want." Dast said thoughtfully, "I'll give you benefits in advance." Klein said frankly, "We want the formula of Mind Reader." He won't hide this potion's formula and will give it to the captain, saying that it is Dast in exchange for his own experience in mastering potions. In this process, Klein will definitely verify the formula and accidentally, it in his head. In addition, the formula exchanged with his personal experience can accumulate more merits for him, but at that time, plus the previous part, he may not even need to be extra busy, and he can apply for the clown formula and add the main materials to say. Good deal to trade a formula twice. Klein thought in a better mood. Das stared at his eyes, silent for a moment. "You are very calm. I will try to get this formula, but I am not sure how long it will take. If it is too dangerous, I hope to use other compensation instead." "No problem." Klein didn't intend to force the other side too much, and then he described the acting method in a subtle way. "The key to fighting out of control lies in the name of the potion. We must understand it and its true meaning, which is not something that can be accomplished by thinking alone. We must really experience it. For example, as an audience, you have to understand that you are only an audience, not an actor, but an audience." Das listened very intently, and it took a long time to say, "It's really a brand new theory." "Oh, I prefer to use theory to describe what you just said. It's like the corresponding theory of drama and opera actors. I'll try it and hope for a good change. If it really works, I will try my best to help you get the Mind Reader formula. May the goddess bless you." Klein drew a scarlet moon on his chest. He didn't attach the potion formula of psychological doctor because he knew that it belonged to the task that Dast's current position could not be completed, and the other party would be exposed if he was not careful. Therefore, he intends to take his time to help Dast get a higher position in the psychological alchemy meeting step by step. In that case, the long-term benefits will be very, very rich. Klein didn't stop, first observed the outside, through the hole in the door, and then quickly left and turned to a small shooting range belonging to the Night Watchman. When he entered there and locked the door, his face became heavy again. In the speculation that the goddess church didn't sum up the acting method just now, he thought of something that was ignored by himself. The reason why he ignored it was because two things that should have been related together were reversed, so he didn't think further. The first thing is that the Antigonus family was destroyed by the Church of the Goddess of the Night. The second thing is that the Antigonus family holds the Soothsayer's sequence, or at least a large part of it. Klein knew that the interval between the two things was too long, and he hardly put them together for analysis, so he ignored the strangeness. But now, with such a list, the problem is quite obvious. Since the Antigonus family holds at least a large part of the sequence of soothsayers, how can the Church of the Goddess of the Night, which completely destroyed them, only get the sequence 9 soothsayers? That's not the only prize you can get, just the members of the Aurora Club who get a magical notebook of the Antigonus family can get the clown formula. What about the Church of the Night Goddess that destroyed the whole Antigonus family? Even if the Antigonus family had prepared to hide the most valuable things in the main peak of Honaki's mountain, the Night Goddess Church should not only gain so much. They killed many members of the Antigonus family, but the dead can speak. P.S. I'm going to finish it at midnight today, and I'm asking for a monthly ticket. Well, I'll put it off for a few days, and then I'll work overtime. Tomorrow is Monday, and the two shifts are at 00:00 in the morning and 12:30 at noon, and then I'll fix it at 12:30 at noon and 7:30 at night. Chapter 143 Fool Brand Simultaneous Translator. First, more recommended votes monthly ticket. Klein paced back and forth a few steps in the small shooting range, thinking about the intention of the Night Goddess Church in the Soothsayer sequence. They don't want the Night Watchman to choose this way, or they don't want them to be strong in this way, so they just issued a sequence of 9 soothsayers with obvious auxiliary functions. Captain also said that the temple may have a follow-up formula. No, in the confidential information I can see, they didn't even provide the names of potions corresponding to sequence 8 and sequence 7, but only described the corresponding combat characteristics. In other words, they didn't want the following people to know that the top management had the corresponding information. Don't all the Night Watchmen who choose this way may become the revenge evil spirit of the Antigone family? Is that why the church's top management made a similar decision, or is there another reason? For a while, Klein was full of doubts about the top management of the Night Goddess Church and had a strong alert and vigilance. He reconsidered whether to make a special application and became a clown above board. If there is something terrible hidden in it, didn't I jump into the crater myself? I'm not the kind of person who can accept strict investigation. However, the Tingen branch has submitted the clown formula. As a member of the Soothsayer, I know this and hope to get a promotion. Isn't it normal? And sequence 8 still belongs to the low sequence, which should not attract too exaggerated attention. The only problem is that it only took me a month to completely master the good potions and submit a special application. If the high-level officials know and understand the acting method, they will understand the key at a glance. Of course, my reasons are sufficient. After all, I know Psychic Daily, and I am friends with old Neil, who strictly abides by the motto, and I am inspired to further complete the acting method. Well, even if Daly stayed in the rank of Psychic in sequence 7 for 3 years, she showed signs of digestion, and then she really entered the high-level site and was trained as the future Archbishop and Senior Deacon. I won't attract too much attention at the stage of clown unless I digest the potions again in a few months, so that they can be sure that I really have mastered the acting method. That is to say, it is not too risky to apply for the clown potion. You can continue, but you should pay attention afterwards. Hey, you can only go one step at a time and make a divination decision when you go home. Klein gathered his thoughts, took out the revolver in the underarm gun bag, and carried out daily shooting practice and corresponding maintenance. The quality of this pistol from his classmate Welch is beyond his imagination, and it can last for a long time without accident. Of course, this is also due to the maintenance methods he learned from Dunn and Leonard. In fact, it is nothing if it is broken. These are all materials that can be applied. Klein looked at the target, put away his revolver, and left the shooting club. He returned to number 2 Daffodil Street by trolleybus. Before he got close, he saw a girl wandering at the door. This girl is wearing a long blue dress with beautiful lace and a hat with a fine gauze hanging down. It is Melissa's classmate, Elizabeth, who has a lovely baby fat. Finding Klein approaching, she quickly greeted her, took off her hat, and looked delighted. She paused for 2 seconds, suddenly smiling. "Good afternoon, Mr. Moridi. I think you must have just returned from the town of Ramd, right?" "I'm sorry, I came back this morning." Klein smiled and said, "No, I came back from Zotland Street." "Well, that's a very true answer." He thought humorously in his mind. Elizabeth paused, and immediately said with a little excitement, "Well, my guess was wrong. I came to see you today, and waited here to tell you that I didn't have any more nightmares last night, and I didn't dream about the knight in black full-body armor. This is exactly the same as your divination result." Of course, the soul of hatred was completely purified by the seal 3-0782. "Even I couldn't do it if I wanted to channel on the spot, not to mention your dream." Klein chuckled and responded gently, "I'm glad you got rid of your troubles, and I'm very satisfied with my divination yesterday." Thank you again. Well, I have to leave now, and I have a class in the afternoon. Normorita. I'll find time to visit Melissa." Elizabeth left briskly and got on a taxi nearby, looking at the scene of the carriage slowly sweeping back from the window. Her mouth was slightly reminded, and she thought proudly, Melissa certainly didn't know that she had such a powerful brother. I feel that my explanation just now has no effect at all. The girl is always willing to believe her intuition, and the fact that her brain makes up. Klein watched Elizabeth get on the bus, shook her head and took out the key to open the door, all the way back to her bedroom. He took a short break and began to sort out and summarize the things of the previous week, including the unresolved parts in the past. After finishing this routine, he burned the paper, took out a silver pocket watch and snapped it open. At 2:30? Wait 15 minutes. Klein saw that there was still time, so he simply put on the oldest formal coat, went to Slim Bakery in Iron Cross Street and bought a cup of sweet iced tea from Mrs. Wendy. Drinking a drink and returning leisurely, he sealed the bedroom with spirituality at 2:45 and went 4 steps backwards into the fog. In the silent and ancient huge palace, Klein wrote a new divination sentence on the parchment that appeared. The clown potion should be obtained through the Night Watchman organization. Putting the pen away, he untied the pendulum wrapped around his wrist, held it firmly with his left hand, and hung the topaz pendant in the position where it was about to touch the parchment. After 7 times of meditation, his eyes deepened, and the pendulum in his hand began to rotate slightly and clockwise. The answer is yes, it should be. But the sequence after clown is hard to say, and I still have to seriously develop my tarot club. Klein carefully went over the matter again. Then, he pressed his hand to the crimson star representing the sun from a distance. He wants to call the boy in Silver City in advance to confirm whether he has leaked anything above the fog to this 6-member deliberation group. If not, then give the other party a better way to grasp the party time. The Silver City, in the Berg's room, Dyrek sat quietly by the bed, waiting for the call of the fool. In order to fulfill the task of not staying with others as much as possible, he simply didn't go out after his return, and he had already eaten all the food in the room. Enduring hunger, listening to the purring of one's stomach, Dyrek felt like a Promethean wandering in the dark wasteland, but he still didn't speak and didn't get up. At this moment, he saw a crimson in the void and swallowed himself up. The gray, boundless, cold and silent world appeared in his eyes again, and the fool who sat on the head and was shrouded in thick fog appeared in his eyes again. Klein was satisfied that the call was not disturbed and made sure that he did not get a warning of danger. "Son, we meet again," he said with a smile in giant language. Dyrek, again shocked by what happened, lowered the head to say, "You are a trustworthy fool. Other members need to wait for a while. Let me confirm one thing with you first." Klein spoke in Ruin this time, but gave this mysterious space the idea of translating it into giant language. So, in Dyrek's ear, the other party said is still a giant language. He asked doubtfully, "What is it?" "Well, after I have mastered the giant language, the mysterious space above the fog can realize the simultaneous translation of this language, so I don't worry that Justice and Upside Down can't understand the speech of Sun." Why am I so tired as a big boss? Klein reached out and held his forehead, shook his head and smiled. "I allow you to recite my name and remember the following titles. A fool who does not belong to this era, a mysterious master above the fog, and a yellow and black king in charge of good luck. Dyrek listened to the pupil contraction, but he was afraid to be distracted. He kept repeating himself in his mind, and then he sought confirmation from the fool. Every time you return to the Silver City from here, you need to recite my name with a short ceremony. I will inform you in advance of the subsequent party. You don't need to care about it at ordinary times, and you don't need to avoid other people. Just wait until you receive my notice and be alone within 1,000 heartbeats. Klein said the way to think about it for a long time. This is essentially a response to prayer. Because of concerns about the situation in Silver City and saving time, Klein directly omitted other steps of the ceremony. Anyway, it was a prayer to him. 1,000 heartbeats? Dyrek don't like rhetorical question to himself. Klein introduced the general situation of the tarot club to the other party, then took out a silver pocket watch and snapped it open. Dyrek paused, instinctively staring at the wonder. Looking at 3 o'clock, Klein pressed his hand to the crimson star symbolizing justice and sun. Dyrek's eyes looked at this scene without turning and saw the opposite and lateral light, stretching out 2 vague figures. Audrey Hall looked around for half a circle, suddenly stuck, and then she heard the voice of Mr. Fool, which is always smooth. This is a new member with the title of Sun. This is Miss Justice, and this is Mr. Upside Down. New member? Audrey was first surprised and then filled with joy. She is very happy to see tarot grow and develop, and she has a sense of ownership. Alger, the upside-down man, frowned slightly and was a little dissatisfied with the Fool's sudden recruitment of a new member. At least you should have told us in advance. However, a big man like Mr. Fool really doesn't consider our feelings. He thought helplessly and briefly said hello to Justice and the Sun. In this short process, Audrey entered the audience state and carefully examined the new member, Sun. His age is not too big. Those body movements show that he is a little nervous and cramped, but the whole person has always maintained enough silence, giving people a feeling of, a lone wolf. Yes, a lone wolf. Audrey thought, while turning her attention to the first Fool on the bronze long table. She said with delight, "Mr. Fool, I have collected 2 more pages of the Diary of Emperor Russell. P.S. It's Monday, and I'm asking for a monthly ticket for recommended votes, Chapter 144 Tripartite Transaction, for recommended votes monthly ticket. There are actually 3 pages, but those words are too complicated to remember. My limit now is a little more than 2 pages. Any more will lead to confusion. Others can only wait for the next time." Audrey silently added a few words in her mind. The new Roselle diary? Klein's spirit, knowing the answer to ask with a smile. "Miss Justice, what do you need?" Audrey's eyes lit up, but she replied demurely, "You know, I'm about to finish digesting the audience potion. I hope to get the formula of the Mind Reader potion earlier, so as to prepare the materials in advance. Well, I know that the contents of these 2 pages are not much, which may not match the value of the Mind Reader formula. I'll give you another page and, well, I'll pay you an extra sum of money." Her voice did not fall. "Suddenly feel wrong. Can't help but mercilessly scold yourself in my mind. Mr. Fool is at least a big shot close to the gods. How can he value vulgar money? So..." Audrey failed to maintain the audience state. Busy stammered at it. "I didn't mean that. Mr. Fool, I mean you can specify the compensation you want. Yes, that's it. I like your proposal just now. I will answer this way. When you really digest the Spectator potion, you can get the subsequent formula. I have a man who is busy with something and just needs a certain amount of money. This is his anonymous account, which is in the Bank of Backlander. Well, this week I will disguise myself to Tingen. The Bank of Backlander. Bank of Backlander is one of the 7 largest banks in the Kingdom of Rouen and holds the right of liquidation. The Kingdom of Rouen uses centralized bill clearing to handle the transfer business between banks in the same city, but unlike its counterparts in the Republic of India, not all banks here can join this ranks, and the 7 largest banks firmly hold this right, so they are also called clearing banks so that other banks can only attach themselves to them. However, the opening of accounts in different places can only be completed in the same bank through the liquidation of different branches. With the steam train and cable telegraph, the efficiency in this area has improved a lot at this moment, the son Dyrek Berg suddenly said. Mind Reader Potion Formula? Followed by the Mind Reader of the Psychoanalyst. Audrey looked at him doubtfully. You know. At the same time, Miss Justice has a problem with the audience's instinct. The other party uses the ancient name psychoanalyst of the corresponding sequence 7, not the more modern psychologist. It's strange, this guy. Audrey looks at the son's every move again. Dyrek didn't feel that he showed an unusual side at all, and seriously replied, I can help you get this formula. With that, he felt guilty because he couldn't take it out temporarily and forcibly explained, this is a sequence originated from the Dragon Clan, and our Silver City was once under the rule of the giant Wang Ting. You know, giants and dragons are sworn enemies, so the 9, 8, and 7 of this sequence are all in the Silver City, and I have a way to get it. The child. Kuei have been told him not to talk nonsense, don't reveal their origin, as a result. Klein almost tried to stretch out his hand to cover his face, alas. Although the son teenager looks very silent, painful, and mature, he is really just a teenager. However, it made me understand one thing. Originally, the audience sequence originated from the Dragon Clan, so it is no wonder that the symbol behind Miss Justice's high-backed chair is the dragon. The history of Silver City is well preserved. Klein maintained his posture of leaning back and listened thoughtfully to the statement of the son. In fact, he can easily stop the son from revealing these things as long as he doesn't help simultaneous translation. Justice and Upside Down will be heard in vain because they don't understand at all. But on second thought, Klein felt that this could effectively consolidate his powerful and mysterious image in the hearts of the 3 members, so he listened with a smile, without making a sound or making unnecessary attempts. Wang Ting, the giant, the Dragon Clan, the City of Silver. Audrey heard a confused, first look at the opposite Upside Down. Judging from the body movements that the gentleman was equally shocked and confused, she looked at the top of the bronze long table, only to see the fool sitting in the high-backed chair, covered with a thick gray mist, and his right elbow resting on the armrest, letting his palm rest leisurely against the microside head. Not surprised, not surprised. Without thinking, without doubt, only looking at it with a slight smile, he knew. He knew. Audrey and Alger made a positive judgment in their minds almost at the same time. Silver City, I've never heard of this place. Where is it? Audrey tried to ask. Upside Down. Alger is focused on listening, but at this moment, Dyrek Berg, the son, is full of doubts. He can see that besides the existence of the fool who may be a god, Justice, and hanging upside down are obviously closer to the extraordinary, a certain sequence of extraordinary. In the place abandoned by God, Dyrek has never seen anyone alive except the people of the Silver City. So, he asks, you are not the people of the Silver City, but which city? Alas. Klein can't help sighing again. Audrey's lips moved and she didn't know how to answer at the moment. Well, his hidden meaning is that if you don't want to answer similar questions, don't ask about other people's cities casually. Miss Justice nodded gently and closed her mouth gracefully. Obviously, Alger, the upside-down man, also misunderstood the purpose of the son and didn't know that the other person was really and simply asking questions. So he kept silent and didn't say a word. Dyrek, who didn't get an answer, seemed to understand something, so he stopped mentioning it and said instead, I will get the formula of the Mind Reader's potion as soon as possible, and I want to exchange it for the initial sequence of the Sun Pathway. The Sun Way? Sequence 9-foot Singer? Hanging upside down, Alger immediately asks, the Sun. Dyrek thought the next way. It should be this, but I don't know much about it. Klein, who was watching everything, decided to come forward because he didn't want to risk being robbed of business by others. He smiled and said, I don't think Miss Justice has the formula of Singer, but there's a good chance that Mr. Upside Down can get. See, Audrey nodded. He chuckled again. I gave Sun a recipe of Singer, and Sun gave Miss Justice the recipe of Mind Reader as soon as possible, and Miss Justice gave me the newly obtained Roselle diary, thus completing the transaction. Well, according to the principle of equivalent exchange, the son has suffered, but he just promised that when he really comes up with the formula of mind reader, Miss Justice will consider how to compensate him, or I will compensate him, and Miss Justice will provide me with money as a relative, and he needs to do something recently. This is because the son may not be able to accept it. Klein deliberately added that sentence at the back, in order to make hanging upside down and Justice focus on things that the son may not receive compensation, in order to highlight their unfathomable, so that everyone can ignore the person who is short of money as soon as possible. It may not be compensated. Where is the son? South China? Alger immediately frowned slightly. The origin of the son is also very mysterious. Sure enough, Mr. Fool also has his men in reality. Audrey finally saw the dawn of becoming a mind reader in Sequence 8. But there were other ideas. She held back her excitement and smiled. I have no opinion. Me neither. When Derek saw that he could get the initial sequence of the sun right on the spot, he nodded without hesitation and didn't care about the subsequent compensation. Alger, the upside down who was excluded from this tripartite transaction, didn't take a position to speak. Although he can really get the formula of Singer, it will also take a week or two. At this time, Klein, the fool who successfully delayed the compensation until the next meeting or the next meeting, pressed his hand forward in a good mood and showed the formula of Singer. The main material, a crystal sunflower or the tail feather of an adult flint bird or an arsonist bird, a piece of siren stone or a singing sunflower, auxiliary material, a piece of midsummer grass, 5 drops of July wine juice, and a piece of dark elf leaves. He passed this recipe to the son, and when he saw the other person frowning, he immediately stretched. Well, the name of the material in the abandoned land must still have the ancient characteristics. Himself in spirituality and fell sharply. Back to the room, Klein lifted the spiritual wall and took a break to prepare to go out again. There is no need for him to play the role of diviner now, so there is no need to make a fixed schedule for going to the divination club. He can earn extra money there occasionally and perform the supervision duties of a night watchman. Klein originally hoped to be lazy in the afternoon, but then he thought that there was one thing left to do, and he had to cheer up again according to the agreement. He had to go to Detective Henry today and get the final report of the investigation of the Red Chimney. It is said that big people are very busy, and then they have to take time to go with Benson and Melissa to the Association for Helping Domestic Servants in Tingen City to find a good handyman. Klein struggled to change his shirt, put on a black tuxedo coat, and walked out of the door like a gentleman with a half-height silk hat and a silver cane. Beneath Henry's private detective office in Basic Street, Klein put on a mask, lowered his hat, and quickly crossed the street and entered the stairs. Chapter 147 Late-Night Visitors in the Private Detective's Office. Sir, your entrustment has been completed. Henry, a private investigator in the voice of alcohol and tobacco, looked at the gentleman wearing a black tuxedo, a semi-high silk hat, and a dark mask in front of him, and said with a sigh of relief, "This is really not an easy task. It is not difficult, but it took us too much energy. Frankly speaking, I regret it very much. I regret that the price was too low before. No matter what you say, I won't pay another penny." Klein emphasized in his mind, pointing to a thick stack of documents on the coffee table. "This is the investigation report." "Yes." Henry held down the investigation report with at least 60 pages and sighed. "This is the most troublesome thing I have ever done." His voice did not fall when he saw Klein handing over 4 one-pound notes, so his attention was turned to identifying the authenticity. "This is all the last payment." Klein reached out and held the thick investigation report. Henry coughed 2 tracks. "You are really an honest and trustworthy gentleman. Well, I didn't expect the investigation report to use so much paper at first, which was completely out of my budget." Just then, Klein picked up the very thick investigation report and stood up with a brush. He bowed a little and immediately put on his cane and walked to the gate. Detective Henry's follow-up words were stuck in his throat. "Hey, how could I possibly pay for the paper expenses of the survey report? This is included in the overall commission fee." Klein touched the remaining 5.8 pounds of Sellers' private money, muttered something in his heart, and walked quickly to Basic Street. He looked around first to make sure that no one was paying attention to himself, and then he left here smartly, looking for an opportunity to take off his mask. Klein is not going to go home now, but is going to find a cafe nearby, sort out the investigation report quickly, find out the houses with tenants replaced after he divined the red chimney, and then check the part before dinner. There are quite a few cafes in the neighborhood, but almost none of them meet Klein's requirements, and steam and machinery became the symbol of the times. More and more cafes have lowered their style and become cheap restaurants, providing busy workers with tea, coffee, bread, toast, lamb stew with tender peas and other dishes. So decent gentlemen and ladies no longer go to cafes to talk about things and take this behavior as a symbol. After walking for a long time, Klein finally found a cafe with a fairly good environment. After sitting in the hidden corner booth, he took a sip of Southwell coffee, which only needed 3.5 pence, and carefully opened the investigation report. There are 1,179 houses with dark red chimneys in the northern, eastern, western, southern, Jinwatong, Wharf and University districts of Tianjin. There are 546 houses with the red chimneys described by the employer outside Tianjin. This does not include those towns and villages that belong to Tianjin but are relatively far away. The following is the address of each house and the corresponding landlord and tenant information. According to the employer's requirements, the situation in the last 3 months has been collected in more detail. Klein swept from page to page, constantly recording with a pen on the paper he was carrying. Finally, he found that after he divined the red chimney, there were 25 houses with tenants changing. Not too much. Try to finish the screening in 2 days. Well, I have seen the red chimney in the dream divination and seen part of the house. As long as I encounter it again in reality, I will inevitably have spiritual familiarity, thus confirming my goal. In short, I am the human flesh screening machine. Klein silently nodded and planned out the 15 places to go today according to the different locations of the houses. As for whether such an action is dangerous, he can get the answer without divination. Since there has been a tenant turnover, it shows that the person behind the scenes who always encounters coincidences is left. I hope I can know what the former tenant looks like from the landlord's mouth. However, since that guy hiding behind the scenes can influence my fate unnoticed, making coincidences appear naturally, there will certainly be ways to eliminate the traces of his own existence. Well, I can only pray for the goddess to make that guy have some omissions. Klein spit out a sigh, forcibly cheered up, put on a silk hat, took a cane and a report, got up and walked out of the cafe. Next, he hired a 2-wheeled taxi at a cost of 2 sol and ran through the 15 houses with red chimneys before dinner. Unfortunately, none of them was the one he saw in his dream. If tomorrow's screening is still the result, things will be in trouble. He actually lives in the red chimney house that I divined before. This either means that he has enough confidence and he is not afraid of my tracing, or even the arrest of the night watchman squad at Tianjin's market value, or that he doesn't know that he is exposed. Later, it is a kind of power that does not belong to him completely. Klein stood at the door of number 2 Daffodil Street, analyzing one after another. After several minutes, he patted some dust on the black tuxedo, pressed the half-high silk hat on his head, took out the copper key, and opened the door to go home with a smile on his face. He is going to prepare lamb stew and honey barbecue for Benson and Melissa tonight, at 11 o'clock at night. The 3 brothers and sisters who said good night to each other entered their bedrooms respectively. Klein closed the door, stood in front of the desk, and looked out of the window with the light of the gas lamp. At this time, the neighborhood was dark, and only a few street lamps were guiding the direction. The stars in the sky were embedded in the black curtain, bit by bit, which was not clear. I don't know what Backlunda, known as the land of hope and the capital of all cities, will be like. Klein whispered silently, reaching for the curtain, ready to pull. Just then, a cold wind blew without warning, and the light of the gas lamp suddenly turned green. Klein subconsciously stepped back and tapped his left tooth twice. At the same time, he leaned against the bed and tried to get the pistol under the pillow in his sight, where Rand highlighted a face on the wall below the gaslight and above the desk, a translucent face with no eyes, no nose, and only a mouth. Don't shoot. The face with his mouth closed, duck and communicate? Klein has a gun in his hand and aimed at the target. What do you want to do? He asked with a heavy voice, the face a chuckle track. I'm Daly. Daly? Psychic Daly? Daly, the psychic who was transferred to Backlando Parish? Klein doubt frown way. Ms. Daly? I know that such a visit is too rude. I should let you know in advance so that you can be fully prepared. However, it is not convenient for me to meet you directly now, and I can only communicate with you through this little guy. The translucent face with no eyes and no nose smiled. Although the voice is wrong, ethereal and harsh, it is indeed Ms. Daly's speaking style. The ability of psychic is really cool. Klein secretly regrets and asked without hanging down the gun. Lady, what do you want to communicate with me? If I were you, I would seal the bedroom with spirituality first, otherwise, your family will think that you have mental problems. The strange, translucent face joked, Hee, you don't need to be so alert. I secretly returned to Tingen because of a letter from Dunn. You know, the night watchman can't leave his jurisdiction at will. A letter from the captain? Klein didn't go near the desk, but groped for holy night powder from the dark bag inside the black trench coat on the coat rack. Dunn and I are both extraordinary people who grew up in Tingen's market value night watchman team, and our relationship has always been very good. Last Thursday, yes, on Thursday, he sent me a letter mentioning your business, saying that you imitated the motto of the secret spy and summed up your own code of fortune tellers from the divination behavior, and claimed that this effectively helped you master the potions, so that it would no longer happen that you heard voices that you shouldn't hear and saw pictures that you shouldn't see. Haha, you really don't go to seal the room? I personally don't mind being misunderstood by your brother and sister. The translucent face explained slowly. So that's it. It's really Ms. Daly. Klein breathed a sigh of relief, stuffed the holy night powder back into his inner pocket, then walked to the desk a few steps and took out a silver knife for the ceremony from the drawer. Quickly build a spiritual wall. He turned and looked at the strange faces highlighted on the wall. Ms. Daly, what else did the captain say in the letter? He just expressed his doubts and felt that he had grasped something, but he couldn't clearly realize it. I hope I can get my opinion. With the help of a strange face without eyes or nose, Daly said, When I read that letter this morning, I knew that you were definitely not as ignorant as you said. Hee, Mr. Moridi, I think you should have summed up the acting method. Is that why you came to me? Klein asked neither positively nor negatively. Daly has clearly understood the acting method. He calmly judged the sentence in his mind. Daly let that translucent face show some smile expression way. Yes. I think we should be honest with each other on this matter. I know that you have summed up the acting method, and you must know that I have mastered it. Alas, it took me nearly 2 years to clearly realize that you have only been an extraordinary person for a month and a half. Hear the words of Daly. Klein considered for a moment, then smiled calmly, say with smile, This is because you are my role model. He wanted to say, I just stood on the shoulders of giants, but he finally decided not to give Russell the chance to appear in his ears again. P.S. I have known about the activity for a long time, and I have communicated with you after reading the article. However, I have to follow my own pace. In recent days, the old man in my family has celebrated his birthday, and I am rushing back and forth. In addition, there have been many outbreaks in the past few days, so I have to adjust it. Well, I will try to add more before the end of the activity. In short, this is a new book on the shelves, and there will be no less editions later. As for those tasks, I have already completed 2. Chapter 148 Messenger Klein's answer made Daly chuckle, and the translucent face with only the mouth said, Even if you were inspired by the motto of the secret peeping man and determined your ideas from my experience and performance, it only took more than a month to clearly understand acting, and sum up your own code of diviners, which is enough to prove that you have outstanding wisdom and open mind. Klein didn't go to pester this topic that made him guilty, and instead asked, Madam, does the church know this so-called acting method? There is no doubt that they are very clear. I have read the historical materials of the church, looking for similar people who have been promoted quickly and ignored the law. I found that there are not many bishops like night watchmen's, and I am not the most special one, and they're ending. Speaking of which, Daly deliberately paused, with a heavy tone. What are their endings? Klein, heart tight, blurted out, Does the Church of the Goddess of the Night regard acting as the temptation of evil spirits and demons? The translucent face with no eyes, no nose, and no ears suddenly laughed aloud. Their results are quite beautiful. Except for the part that was out of control and sacrificed in extraordinary events, the rest at least became archbishops or senior deacons, among which there was no shortage of strong people who successfully promoted to high order. Well, in the Church of the Goddess, Sequence 4 and Sequence 3 were collectively called saints, Sequence 2 and Sequence 1 were angels on earth, and of course, every angel was once a saint. Miss Daly, you were deliberately scaring me just now. Klein's mouth was slightly moved, and she asked doubtfully without concealing herself. Since the Church has mastered the method of acting for a long time, why not tell everyone who is on duty at night? Although this can't completely avoid losing control, it can certainly greatly reduce the corresponding probability and reduce unnecessary losses. The translucent face with only a mouth appeared a little confused. I don't know why. They told me that I would know the secret when I became an archbishop or a senior deacon. I came to see you today in the hope that you would clearly tell Dunn the acting method before submitting a special application. Klein didn't foolishly ask each other why they didn't do it themselves, but thoughtfully. Once you are noticed by the Church, you must make a promise and make a vow, and don't tell others about the acting method? Yes, swearing in his name in front of the goddess' sacred object is binding enough. Believe me, you absolutely don't want to know the consequences of violating it. Now I can only talk to someone like you, who also holds the playing method. Your own state has told me the answer before you answered, so I dare to say that noun. Daly let the strange face side. She paused and added, I only vaguely grasped the essence of acting, so I quickly digested the potion. Yes, at the top of the Church, digestion was used to describe the mastery of the potion. I think this is very appropriate. In short, before I made an oath and was told about the acting method, I didn't have a very clear understanding of this matter, so I couldn't accurately remind Dunn and them. I had given up, but I didn't expect to meet you. A wonderful person who clearly realized the acting method before submitting a special application. No, genius. So that's how you see me, lady? Klein corners of the mouth for a moment, solemnly promised. I was going to remind the captain of the existence of the acting method by special application. With your explanation, I don't need to worry about anything. Very well, you are really a kind guy. There was obvious relaxation in Daly's tone. Ma. It seems that you are only 2 or 3 years older than me. Klein pointed out each other's problems in his mind. Before he spoke, the translucent strange face continued. If you have any questions or need any help, you can write to me and wait for me. When I become an archbishop or a senior deacon and understand why the Church hides the secret of the acting method, I will hint at the quality of this matter. Klein listened to the spirit and asked without hesitation, What's your address, madam? For him, there can be more than one helper, and this is a relatively powerful psychic in the face of Klein, who didn't refuse at all. Daly was silent for a few seconds and smiled gently. Our communication should not go through the post office, and we should not use normal letters. This is very unsafe. I will teach you a relatively simple ritual magic, which can summon a unique spirit that belongs to me. You will give it a written letter, and it will be delivered to me accurately. The speed is not as fast as that of a telegram, but it is faster than a steam train. You can finish it at noon, and I will receive it in Backlander that night. Klein listened intently and nodded slightly. Very practical ritual magic. Daly Low say with smile, This ritual magic is characterized by praying to oneself and drawing strength from one's own spirituality. It is quite hidden without going through the gods, but its power is often small. First of all, you choose herbs and essential oils in the corresponding fields, which is no different from normal ritual magic, but the candle only needs to symbolize its own root. Then, there is the mantra part, which has 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph is I, shouting I in ancient Hermes language, giant language, dragon language, or elvish language, and the second paragraph is I call in my name. Upper bound? In the field of occultism, this often refers to the spiritual world. Klein carefully remembers and analyzes the process of the ceremony, and in this respect, he is barely an expert. The advantage of this ritual magic is that it bypasses the gods and uses the power of itself purely, so that it can obtain diversified magic effects without the limitation of the fields to which the gods belong. The problem is that it depends on its own strength, and the weak are always weak, and the strong are always strong. Klein feels that he has gained new knowledge, which is the mystery that his current sequence cannot remove. Daly repeatedly described it several times and solemnly emphasized that, remember, don't change the specific description of the summoner at will. It will easily attract terrible monsters. Okay. Klein nodded honestly. At the same time, he suddenly thought of one thing. If the description of the summoning object is changed to a fool who does not belong to this era, a mysterious master above the fog, and a yellow and black king in charge of good luck, what will be summoned? Is it completely ineffective, or is the fog suddenly coming? Or do you need me to go to that mysterious space to respond? Will this help me to shake the power above the fog more? Will this cause any terrible chain reaction? Klein, who has just succeeded in dying on the mutated sun emblem, is still dying. Finally, according to his heart's wishes, he plans to go to the fog first and then decide whether to try it. He wanted to think and asked with interest, Madam, if we strictly use the acting method, how long will it take from sequence 8 to sequence 7, and how long will it take from sequence 7 to sequence 6? According to the information I have read, sequence 8 to sequence 7 can last for 3 months to 2 years, depending on whether you can quickly understand the core spirit and corresponding rules in the process of playing. Sequence 7 to sequence 6 takes 6 months to 3 years. Sequence 6 to sequence 5 is similar. Sequence 5 to sequence 4, 3 to 20 years. Daly roughly described. Klein suddenly smiled to smile. So, you're in sequence 6? He heard from Dunn that it took a year for Daly to go from the Serial 9 Corpse Receiver to the Serial 8 Gravedigger, and it also took a year for him to go from the Gravedigger to the Serial 7 Psychic, and she became an extraordinary person for only 5 years. That is to say, Daly has been in the position of Psychic for almost 3 years. Yes, that's why I transferred to Backlander Parish. The strange, translucent face calmly replied, My present job is Necromancer, but I prefer the name Psychic. Well, this little guy is tired, and I have to leave. In this case, I won't say, May the goddess bless you. May you have a good dream. Klein put his hand on his chest and saluted with a smile. No, I won't have a good dream tonight. I'm going back to Backlander. It's not a pleasant experience, just like having sex with someone I don't like. Daly's voice became lower and lower, and the translucent face with no eyes and no nose slowly retreated into the wall, leaving no trace. The light of the gas lamp flashed brightly, and all the shades and greens disappeared without a trace. Klein, who has been driving a second sight, stared at such a change, and it took him a long time to return to absolute being. Psychic, no. The Necromancer is really amazing. He can make a messenger in the mysterious field. I don't know how special my sequence 7 and 6 will be. He silently muttered 2 sentences, quickly lifted the spiritual wall and extinguished the gas lamp in the bedroom, and quietly lay down on the bed in the dark. He didn't plan to go to the fog tonight, so he had to watch out for Daly's sudden return, and to quote a classic saying by Dunn Smith, Oh, I forgot one thing. At that time, even if you want to kill people, you can't. The next day, Klein entered Blackthorn Security Company 3 minutes early. Good morning, Klein, the new civilian is here. Luo Shan greeted with a big smile. Klein sincerely feel happy for each other. Congratulations, Luo Shan. The goddess heard your prayer. The state of my skin is coming back. Luo Shan nodded with bright eyes. After a few commonplaces, Klein went to the partition and knocked on the door of the captain's office. Please come in. Dunn's mellow voice came out. Klein pushed the door and went in, and saw the captain instinctively sit up straight, making his gray eyes quiet and ready to find something. Cough. He cleared his throat and sat down with his hat and cane. Captain, I have something to report. What is it? Dunn shook hands and asked with a heavy voice. Chapter 149 Explicit betting. Klein saw a serious Dunn Smith suddenly smile away. Captain, I figured out one thing yesterday. What is it? Dunn repeated the question just now, leaned back slightly, and shook hands loosely. Klein recalled the prepared draft before. I'm summing up my previous experience. I think the name of the potion itself contains a set of rules to help us master the potion and avoid negative effects. When we follow this set of rules to deal with things, it seems that we have become people in corresponding occupations. Similarly, these rules are implicit. No one tells you directly. You can only summarize them bit by bit from the corresponding occupations, and then make corrections according to different feedback. So, when I became a real diviner in the Divination Club and had my own code of divination, the gibberish and hallucination that bothered me disappeared. This is what I want to understand. With these words, Klein breathed a sigh of relief, and he said everything except playing directly to, I just hope that the captain will not tell me that I have such a clear idea when the church sends someone to ask, which will make me pay more attention. Coupled with this soothsayer approach and the Antigone family factors, there may be no small trouble at that time. However, the captain is also a person who has seen many storms, has rich experience, and is not low in wisdom. Once he understands the playing method, he will definitely notice it. However, he soon made up his mind and had a plan. If the captain doesn't understand the acting method or the church's concealment, then I will wake him up directly before submitting a special application. Well, let's make a sound first, and make sure the tone. Dunn quietly listened to Klein's description, and his gray eyes became more quiet. He was silent for more than 10 seconds, reached out and rubbed his forehead, then picked up his pipe and sniffed. After smelling, he seemed to forget the rules of the night watchman's squad and took out a matchbox. The bluish-white smoke rose slowly, and Dunn half closed his eyes, as if he were tasting tobacco. After a while, he opened his eyes and smiled at Klein. Sorry, I forgot that you don't smoke. Smoking is harmful to health. Klein replied solemnly. Dunn took his pipe and thought for the next way. I seem to understand something, too. No, Captain, you don't understand anything. Anyway, don't wander in my dreams often. Klein didn't ask questions, only outlined a gentle smile. Maybe it won't be long before you submit a special application. Dunn took a deep breath of mixed tobacco, half joking and half sighing. How about tomorrow? Klein replied in my mind, took out a pocket watch and looked at the time. Captain, I have to find old Neil. Today's occult course is about to begin. Okay. Dunn took his pipe and watched Klein go out, closing the door of the captain's office. Klein walked to the stairs leading to the underground in a good mood. When passing by the civilian office, he saw two strangers, a man and a woman, at the new civilian staff. Klein nodded thoughtfully and added in his mind, 2 days later, within this week, submit a special application to the captain. Then, through a series of examinations, he became the clown of Sequence 8. In the quiet underground passage, Klein turned to the armory and pushed open the door left unlocked in the guard room. What happened to you? As soon as he saw old Neil, he was startled. Old Neil listless, pale, constantly with a yawn. I have some constipation recently. I tried a ritual magic to solve this problem last night. As a result, I didn't sleep well all night and ran to the bathroom. Later, I almost fell asleep on the toilet. Well, the constipation problem has been solved. Seeing that it is not a big problem, Klein suddenly felt a little like laughing, but he restrained himself and asked instead, Are you better now? At the same time, he tapped his left tooth twice with concern and observed old Neil's healthy aura with second sight. The yellow of the digestive system and the orange of the excretion and detoxification position are a little dim and mottled, but it's okay, within a reasonable range. Klein's secretly relieved. It's all right. I asked Fry for some anti-diarrheal medicine. Old Neil yawned like a heavy smoker. Today's occult course is taught by yourself. Anyway, it's only the last 2 or 3 days. Okay. Klein said politely, or I'll guard the armory here and take the occult course myself, and you can go to the lounge to catch up on sleep? Old Neil instantly placed straight back, eyes to answer. Little Maridi, you really are the conscientious person next to Fry among the night watchmen. I'll leave the armory to you. He picked up the blanket spread on his lap and rushed out of the guard room like a whirlwind, leaving Klein alone in a daze. In the morning, Blackthorn's security company took on a single extra business and escorted a wealthy businessman to the dock to trade with others. Leonard and Cohen Lee finished it easily and earned a lot of extra money, which made Klein quite envious. However, He still went deep into the mystery step by step, practiced marksmanship, and was tortured by Gawain, a teacher who didn't know what he was stimulated. Shout, shout. Klein gasped with his mouth open, and it took him a long time to recover his ability to take a shower and change clothes. After leaving Gawain's home, he continued to be busy. He hired a taxi at a cost of 2 sol and passed the remaining 10 houses with red chimneys in turn. When the last dark red chimney was far from his sight, Klein's expression became very dignified. The red chimney house I saw in divination is not among the tenants who have recently changed. As a result, things will be in trouble. I don't know when it will be finished. I can't ask others for help in this matter. After all, only when I face the goal can I have that kind of spiritual familiarity. Can't be discouraged, can't give up as long as you have time. Go to screening for 3 months. No, find the target within 2 months. Maybe those I check tomorrow and the day after tomorrow include goals? Well, go back and sort out the information and plan the daily inspection route according to the far and near areas. Klein encouraged himself and kept the depressed mood away. Having made a decision, he was about to tell the driver to turn to Daffodil Street when he suddenly found that it was close to the residence of Ask's teacher. Before Mr. Ask went to travel, he wrote to tell me that he would come back this week, but he didn't mention the specific date. He just stopped by to have a look and left him a note. Well, it's almost time to rent a carriage for 2 hours in Seoul, so he will take Mr. Ask's home as the end point and then change to a public carriage. Klein quickly made a decision. After 4 minutes, he got out of the carriage and came to Ask's house. The grade here is obviously better than Narcissus Flower Street, but it is not as good as Hull Street. There's a lawn in front of the house and a small garden behind it. Ding.
Ding.
Ding. Klein pulled the rope at the door and rang the bell in the room. After waiting for a moment, he heard footsteps coming from inside, and then he saw the door open. Ask, with soft facial features and bronze complexion, appeared in front of Klein because at home, he only casually wore a white shirt, a brown vest, and brown trousers. Klein? I was just about to write to you. Ask greeted warmly. I just got home last night. Klein took a deep look at the tiny mole below his right ear. Mr. Ask, I found a clue to your past. Really? Ask's expression became excited, and his eyes with vicissitudes of life lost their coolness. Let's go in and talk. Klein looked around. Ask nodded quickly, stepped aside and let the guests in. He locked the door and led Klein to the living room on the first floor and sat down on the soft sofa. What clues did you find? He asked eagerly. Klein didn't expect to meet Mr. Askey today. Organizing the language. I was recently commissioned to go to an abandoned castle outside the town of Ramd to get rid of a ghost. Ramd. Ask repeated the name in a low voice, and his brow wrinkled a little. Klein looked at each other's expression and slowed down. In the process of removing the hatred soul, we found something, so we went to the town to do an in-depth investigation. A townsman claimed to have a portrait of the first Baron Ramd and tried to sell it to me. I watched this oil painting curiously and found that the people in the portrait are very similar to Mr. Ask except for their hairstyle and facial features. Even the mole under their ears has the same position and the same size. Under my interrogation, the townsman confessed that the oil painting was a work more than 40 years ago, but the object of imitation did come from the abandoned castle, and it was indeed an ancient portrait painting dug there. You know, people with unique abilities like us all have the skills to initially identify lies, and this skill tells me that the townsman is not lying. Ask leaned forward and listened, holding hands, and didn't speak for a long time, always keeping silent. After 5 or 6 minutes, he just spit out a sigh away. Your description doesn't remind me of anything more. Maybe I have to see the abandoned castle myself. Can you take me there? It's my pleasure. Klein replied, but I need to go home in case my brother and sister worry. No problem. Ask stood up with a brush. Chapter 150 The Discovery of Ask at number 2 Daffodil Street. Klein nodded to Ask, walked quickly to the front of the house, took out the key and opened the door. Melissa, who has gone home, heard the sound of the lock cylinder turning and was busy approaching the living room from the kitchen. See Klein, her eyes bright, said, I bought vegetables, including chicken, potatoes, onions, meat, fish, turnips, and peas, and I also bought a small pot of honey. Sister, have you also adapted to the occasional luxury? Klein low smile a track. You have to prepare dinner today, don't worry about my share. I have something to go out, and I may have to come back in the early morning. Well, do me a favor for teacher Ask, a teacher in the history department of Hoi University. As he spoke, he pointed to the carriage waiting outside the door. Melissa's lips closed twice and took a sip way. Okay. Klein said goodbye to his sister, walked out of the gate, got into the taxi hired by Ask, and spent 2 hours and 40 minutes in the town of Ramd. At this time, it is close to 9 o'clock, and the sky is completely dark. Only the crimson moon and trivial stars that occasionally penetrate the clouds illuminate the place where there is no gas street lamp. After telling the driver to wait in the small town, Klein led Ask and set foot on the road to the abandoned castle. Walking, he found that Azek was getting faster and faster, and he had to run to keep up. In the end, Azek even led the way. Klein wanted to say something, but when he saw the silent face and pursed lips, he wisely swallowed the words back into his throat. At this speed, it didn't take long for the two of them to come to the front of the abandoned castle, almost in ruins. It stretches its body around in the thick darkness, and its spires are scattered into the sky, desolate, wild, gloomy, and bleak. Ask stared at the abandoned old castle and slowed down his pace. He stopped there, his eyes sometimes deep and sometimes blurred, as if he had been wandering between dreams and reality. Suddenly, with a snort of pain, he raised his hand to hold his forehead, and the muscles on his face twisted to be ferocious. Mr. Ask, what's wrong with you? Klein started second sight, while carefully asking questions as early as on the way back to Narcissus Street by taxi. He made a quick divination by playing with coins and predicted that there was almost no danger in returning to Ramd. However, he believes that divination is not omnipotent, and he is always on guard against his own misinterpretation, or there is something wrong with the organization of divination sentences. In addition, Ask is a mysterious and strong teacher, and no one knows how he used to be and how he will react once he is stimulated. Caution, vigilance, and worry have become Klein's normal emotions. Azg didn't immediately answer. Expression pain in the first 2 steps on the ground. Loosen the hand holding the forehead, pointing to the front with a talking tone way. I have seen this old castle in my dream. At that time, it was still intact, with a solid outer wall and a towering spire. I remember there was a stable, there was a well, there was a soldier's barracks, and there was a field that was used to grow potatoes and sweet potatoes. I remember there is a driving range, my child. He is a boy only 7 or 8 years old, and he likes to drag a broadsword that is taller than him, saying that he will become a knight in the future. My wife always complains that the castle is too dark. She likes the sunshine and the warm feeling. Klein, who is looking at the color of the other person's gas field, is numb with his scalp, but he is slightly moved, as if he were experiencing a supernatural story himself. This ancient castle really has something to do with Mr. Ask. Is he really an extraordinary creature who lived for 13,400 years as the first Baron Ramd? Is he a man or an evil spirit? No, there are no evil spirits who run around in the sun and have contact with the night watchman. Klein can't control his own thoughts. Let them collide with each other and inspire more ideas. Just then, Ask stopped talking and stepped into the gate. He walked all the way to the inside, and without Klein's guidance, he skillfully found the organ and opened the secret door to the basement. Hold on to the cane. Klein is 2 steps behind each other, down the stairs, and back to the place where the coffin is placed. Different from what I saw before, the lid of the coffin has been closed and the feeling of warmth and purity has dissipated. The coffin was covered. Fry should have done it, which is the professional ethics of the body receiver. Klein nodded thoughtfully and looked at the emotional Ask teacher with second sight and walked to the front of the coffin. Ask stretched out his hand and pushed the lid of the coffin. Pushing out a gap, he stared at the headless bones inside for a long time and suddenly let out a sad and painful moan. Push, 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 push. Push, 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 push. Pushed at he covered his face with the palm of his hand, just sitting in a decadent way, and the surrounding environment became darker. In a trance, Klein grabbed the first 2 steps, but he stretched out his hand, but he shrank back and didn't dare to disturb him. At this moment, His inspiration told him that Mr. Ask is very terrible now, so terrible that the basement becomes cold and gloomy again. Klein moved silently and approached the stairs. He believes in Mr. Askey's character, but he is afraid that the other party will get out of control. In this uneasiness, he waited for a few minutes and finally saw Ask put down his hands and stood up slowly. Mr. Ask seems to have changed a little. This is the answer inspired me. But in second sight, the color of his aura has not changed significantly, and his mood is as low, lost, and painful as before. Klein quickly made a judgment and felt that the Ask teacher became deeper and more dignified. I remember something, but only a small part, Ask said in an unemotional tone. Then he looked around and said, I am aware of the power that makes your fate uncoordinated here. Ah. Klein was stunned at first and then asked in surprise, Can you trace back to its source? The man behind the red chimney house not only secretly created a coincidence, but also went to Rammed Castle and took the head of the Black Knight in full armor. What on earth does he want to do? What is his real purpose? It's been too long, but I want to have a try. Ask's deep voice seemed to contain an impending volcano. How to try? Klein asked curiously. AZG walked back to the front of the coffin, staring at the inside of the bones. He took my child's skull, and I want to find him with the help of blood ties. Your child? Mr. Ask, are you sure that the Black Knight is your child? You are really an antique. Do you really lose your memory every once in a while? And this is the price of a long life. Klein took a deep breath secretly, and he had the illusion that he was in contact with mythical creatures. At this time, Ask reached out his right hand and cut his index finger with his suddenly sharp thumbnail. A drop of red blood fell down and accurately stained the bones. It quickly soaked into it and instantly turned the whole skeleton red. Wow. 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 Klein suddenly heard the baby crying and felt that someone was staring at him behind him. He jerked out his revolver, pointed to the rear, and then slowly turned around. But as far as he could see, it was empty and nothing existed. Even the stairs to the ground don't exist. Wow. Wow. The baby's crying went into Klein's ear, and he looked at the coffin again. He was startled to see that there were invisible or distorted faces mixed with black fog and turned into a strange door. Cheap, the illusory door opened, and pale arms rushed out, but in front of Ask, they all evaporated into black fog. Through the crack in the door, Klein saw a white skull, which was randomly discarded under a dark brown tree and decomposed into powder in the wind. Bang! Countless pale arms were clipped by the suddenly closed door and fell to the ground. At this time, Klein